So I wrote Faith and Struggle to address African Americans' need for discussions about religion and the way religion is plural in our community. As a scholar of African American history, culture, I thought that I wanted to make an intervention into the religious discussion of ordinary, everyday African Americans. And I wanted to write something that was accessible, I want to write something accessible to ordinary readers about the things we discuss all the time about religion, theology, and Black people debate it, but I wanted to write it through the eyes of prominent people, I thought historical figures who had these discussions themselves. Wow, that's an interesting question. I chose the four people in this book rather randomly. First, I chose Ethel Waters because I'd read an article in the New York Times Magazine by a wonderful author named Margot Jefferson about Waters, and I was shocked to learn that Ms. Waters was a lesbian, but she sang with Billy Graham. And so I thought, I'm going to write about how she conceived of her faith as just an article. And then I started thinking more, well, all of these other people that were used religion in their lives. Mary Lou Williams, the great jazz composer, converting to Catholicism. And I said, okay, well, there's two women, both roughly in the same generation. Well, what about two men roughly in the same generation? And I was interested in this before sort of Black Power and after Black Power. And so two men that struck my mind were Muhammad Ali and Eldridge Cleaver. And so I wanted to see how they assess religion. One, men and women, the kind of issues of gender, the ways that they approach and thought about their own faith. And I remembered all these people as both as a youngster growing up, a college student, and I came back to them thinking this would be a time to explore their lives. Well, every author wants people to read their book, but I particularly want people to read my book, particularly African Americans to read my book, because I think it's an intimate discussion, both my own personal journey in that book, but also the intimate discussions we have among African Americans about theology, non-belief. All of those things are important to the day-to-day lives of African Americans, and it's important in the democracy as a whole. So I want African Americans to read it, one, for finding out about these four interesting people, but also to explore their own lives. The book really focuses around all of us have an inner self. I argue, and many others have too, and so I wanted to explore that inner self, that intersection of our inner selves, what we struggle with in the greater world, our own faith that keeps us going or don't keep us going, as the matter may be. So I want African Americans to read it because we constantly need to rethink the faiths that we hold, so that we don't do destructive things to one another or to people we love. Religion is important in Black life because, first of all, sociologically, African Americans created religious institutions to unify the communities. And then think about it for a moment. Africans were from a variety of nations. They spoke many languages, and so they're all subjected to this institution called American slavery. African Americans build an institution which unifies them around faith, this Protestant faith. This Protestantism gives them the ability to be literate and to resist the kind of oppression put upon them. Now, religion can put oppression upon black people themselves too, and many people argue that. But religion is at a core of our discussion as anything. There's just numerous studies that show that African Americans still in the United States one of the more deeply religious groups of people. My job is to help us think about it, think about why, and what that means for us personally, historically, culturally. It took me approximately 4 years to write this book. First of all, figuring out what's the angle. It's like any art form. Writing is a art form. So what's the angle I'm taking on this book? What's my narrative? What's going to be the thread that hold four people who are from different backgrounds together? And so it took me about 4 years, reading and research and thinking through what I wanted to say, and then the hard task of just sitting down writing a book. The art of writing, as it's always said, is rewriting, and I wanted to try to make something beautiful, and I always think of writing like writing a song. That's something that people will remember, and they'll go back to, and help them shape their discussions. So it took about 4 years. Yes, I'm the author of African Americans in the Furniture City, The Struggle for Civil Rights in Grand Rapids, Michigan. That came out in 2006. That's a community study, a study about how a community is struggling for civil rights. Little was known about black people in Grand Rapids at the time, and I got to be the lucky person to pull all of that stuff together. And prominent in that story was the role of black churches as they formed, as they shaped, as they gave people a language to fight and struggle for civil rights. The next book, Benjamin Elijah Mays, a schoolmaster of the movement, was published in 2012, and that was a biography of Martin Luther King Jr.'s mentor, Benjamin Elijah Mays, who was the president of Morehouse College from 1940 to 67. Mays had a remarkable journey from South Carolina all the way through the halls of academia and meeting Mohandas Gandhi in the 30s and having a shape on a generation of civil rights activists. So I wanted to trace how his ideas influenced King and give people a notion that Martin Luther King came out of these black institutions. What did he gain? What did he learn? What was that black experience about? What was the black intellectual discussion of religion about as he grew up? So Mays was a primary vehicle by which I did this. This is a much more intimate portrayal because I also put myself in this book in a way that the two previous books I tried not to. I use a narrative thread of my own life, how I encountered these people, how I learned about them, and what was the relevant discussion around them as they were coming up. So this is a different kind of book for me. It's not a sort of I stand at a distance history, but very much so I'm a part of the narrative thread of this book. Oh, I hope readers will take a lot away from this book. I especially hope that they will think about their own faiths or non-faiths, that they will come away respecting the diversity of faiths within black communities. That's the chief hope. And I hope all readers, not just black readers, will take away that we have diverse understandings of how we think about spirituality, God, but that we come away respecting each other and upholding democracy about the right to have belief or the right to not believe. These are the things that I hope I fostered in this discussion, this book. And I'm just hoping people read the book and give me feedback and tell me why I'm wrong or tell me why I'm right. And sometimes a good book is to be enjoyed, and I hope people will enjoy the book.